Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. With us is a very special guest, Clete Williams, former Deputy Director, U.S. National Economic Council and former Deputy Assistant to the President for International Economics, joining us from Washington, D.C. Hi, Clete. Thanks very much for sharing your time and perspectives.
For sure. Thank you. It's good to be here.
We will be talking a lot of numbers, so let me just start by putting out a few of them right at the outset. America's unemployment spiked to its highest rate in the post-World War II era, hitting 14.7% earlier this year. At present, there are 6.8 million more unemployed workers than there were in February. The impact of the pandemic on America's economy has been far-reaching. You think Donald Trump could have done a better job handling the economic fallout?
Well, I think there's a question of what happened with the coronavirus and then what happened after. And I do think when you look at the coronavirus itself, the United States, like many other countries around the world, did struggle with getting their arms around it. And obviously, it's not just an American problem. I mean, you see the same thing happening in Europe, where countries have struggled to get this under control. And so I certainly wish that that could have been done more effectively in the United States and elsewhere. In terms of the economic recovery, I think what the United States has done is, in dealing with this fairly unprecedented situation, tried to provide a lot of boost to its economy and try to keep the economy open to the extent that's possible given the circumstances. And so my concern is less with how the economic side of the thing has been handled, rather than just the fact that the United States, like many others, has struggled to get this entire pandemic under control.
But Donald Trump has now rejected the $900 billion economic relief package just a few hours ago. He has called it a disgrace. He wants a big increase now in the proposed $600 direct payments to the less well-off Americans. Aside from how this is being viewed as an act of political brinkmanship before he leaves office, what is your view on this $600 direct payment amount, which has triggered a massive debate, some even ridiculing that figure, saying that it amounts to hardly any respite?
Well, I think you can make the legitimate point that it is not a huge sum of money. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, $600, it's helpful to people, but, it isn't, I think, life-changing, game-changing in these circumstances. That said, I do think you have to look at the broader package. There are a lot of other benefits in there that will be helpful to the economy. And I do think you have to realize what's possible. Congress has been negotiating this for a long time. This is the compromise package they came up with. And I do think in light of that, it does make sense for this bill to be signed so we can move on to the next issue.
Apart from the challenges, the pandemic has also created opportunities. What would the global economy look like, according to you, in the post-pandemic scenario?
I like the way you phrased the question, according to me. Well, look, I mean, I do think that the pandemic has totally changed the conversation around the world about a lot of things. Certainly, it's changed the conversation about the way that people work in certain sectors. And I do think that some of that will not go back to the way that it used to be. I think we found that we could be much more efficient, talking over Zoom and things like that. At the same time, I don't want to overstate it, and clearly there are things that you get from human interaction that are irreplaceable. And so I do think we'll sort of have a hybrid between where we were and where we were before and where we are now. I think the bigger question is going to be, how does it affect the trends on global supply chains? How does it affect the trends on some of the global tension between the U.S. and China? And I have never seen the pandemic as being the reason for these tensions or the reason that people have been revisiting supply chains. But I think it's accelerated that conversation. And there's been a lot of interest in policymaking around those questions. So, I don't want to overstate the impact. I think it's brought these questions to the fore. I think you're going to see a lot of legislating in the United States related to supply chains, related to what's perceived to be an over-reliance on China. But I wouldn't say that's only because of the pandemic. I'd say that the pandemic has crystallized people's thinking on these issues.
Like you said, there is a growing need to create supply chain alternatives. How prepared is the world economy for that challenge?
Well, look, it's something that isn't going to happen overnight. A lot of these supply chains are deeply embedded in places like China. And for a lot of companies, that's led to greater economic efficiency for them. And so I don't think it's going to be an easy question for everyone. But I do think that you do have a generalized view in Washington that there does need to be some shift in some of those supply chains, and that especially on some of the most critical strategic technologies, there should be less linkages with China. Now, I'm not saying that's unambiguously a good thing or a bad thing. People have very different views on it, but I do think that's where the trend lines are going, and especially on certain sensitive technologies or technologies that are critical to the medical supply chains like pharmaceutical production. I do expect Congress to legislate quite a bit there and trying to move supply chains into different locations outside of China and to build networks of trusted, secure suppliers.
Let me quote from a report of yours. You say the world has changed and so must the WTO. You have been making a strong case for reforming the World Trade Organization and how the US and the European Union should make that happen. Tell us more about why you think that is the need of the hour.
Well, let me just say, with respect to the WTO writ large, it has been a very effective organization over time in getting countries to liberalize trade between them, which I think has led to economic growth. And then, of course, the whole theory behind the WTO is that it leads to less conflict because you have a neutral forum to resolve your disputes. So it's been a very positive institution over time. But I think if you look at it realistically, in recent years, it hasn't had negotiated outcomes on some of the most important issues facing the world. And you can look again across the board. You know, the WTO doesn't have rules that deal with the digital economy. The WTO doesn't have rules that deal with what are really politically important issues like climate and labor. The WTO doesn't have rules that deal in a meaningful way with some of China's most unfair trade practices. And so my point is that if this WTO is going to remain relevant to governing trade between us, it needs those kinds of rules. It also needs to find a way to resolve disputes between us in a much more expeditious way, and such that it doesn't put itself in the position of the WTO members and make rules that we never agreed upon. Those are all problems with the system that need to be reformed. Now, I will say, one of the things that troubles me, I try to be ambitious with my proposal, put forward ideas. Certainly, I mentioned the US and the EU because in many respects, we are like-minded, groups of countries, who founded the system together. But I don't think there's really a meeting of the minds with us, with China, maybe even with India, about what the organization should prioritize and what it should look like moving forward. And, again, I try to be ambitious to put ideas out there, but I think we have a long way to go before the world is ready for them. And hopefully this is the start of a conversation about how this organization can be more effective, although it's clearly not the end of the conversation.
Certainly not the end, and being ambitious is also something that is the need of the hour, I would say, given what the economy has had to endure. Millions of jobless Americans are hoping for an early return to the workforce. If you can go back to just talking about the American situation specifically, the rising government debt is another huge concern. What do you expect Joe Biden's economic recovery plan will and should look like?
Yeah. Well, let me just take up your comment on the debt for a second. I mean, clearly, this is a long-term systemic problem that I don't think either party is talking nearly enough about. We don't seem overly concerned about the debt when Republicans are in power or when Democrats are in power. I think, unfortunately, that's unlikely to change in the near term. I think it's a mistake, and we really do need to get our arms around government spending and in particular our entitlement programs. But I don't expect that to be something that you see out of the Biden administration. I do think what the Biden administration is going to focus on out of the gate is, broad scale spending and research and things like that. Now, I would focus on two areas. I mean, and let me just put to the side the COVID relief stuff for the moment. I assume that's going to eventually work itself out, notwithstanding the president's veto threat. But let's just make that assumption. I think what Biden will then pivot to is going to be broad infrastructure spending. There's a lot of conversation about that, which includes everything from transportation to 5G networks. And then I also think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on having the U.S. try to identify what are critical technologies of the future, and figuring out how to make sure we have a competitive environment in those areas, and whether or not that requires, assistance from the government, more research and development emphasis, or things like that. So I think those will be two things that he focuses on early. And that's in that second category. I mean, semiconductors is one of the technologies that we talk about a lot around here. 5G, of course, artificial intelligence, those kinds of things.
Right, and Biden has been talking about the need for rebuilding the economy first. His team of experts also saying that that is where the emphasis should be rather than dealing with the deficit concerns, and that should come later. That sounds like a good plan on paper and sounds good to hear, but do you think that's viable?
Well, look, I think the first half of it is true, that they will focus on the domestic economy first. And I should have added, green spending, I think is going to be an area where you see a lot of efforts to, put in place green infrastructure. I mean, that will clearly be an emphasis. The issue is a lot of administrations never get to the second part of actually dealing with the deficit. And I mean, you can look back at the Bush administration as just a great example of this, where President Bush inherited an economy post 9/11, was in a bad situation, and they did a lot. They did tax cuts and other things to boost the economy. And then when he tried to reform Social Security, it didn't get anywhere. And my concern is that you may have that kind of situation play out in the United States, where we do a really good job in spending, but then we don't do such a good job at controlling the deficit and ultimately dealing with the debt.
Clete Williams, thanks very much for joining us here and sharing those perspectives. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.